welcome in. This is the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. We are happy to see you here for our first episode. I am the co-host, Jacob Reeder.
I'm Chris Langley.
And I'm Payton Hedrick.
And we're excited to have you here. Let's get straight in to Weekly Words.
All right, so the first big story I would say of this week, this came out yesterday. It was announced that the Indianapolis Colts and Marlon Mack had agreed to seek a trade to send Marlon Mack to another team. Now, as most of you know, Marlon Mack suffered a season-ending injury during week 1 of last year's season, and he's only played basically one game up to this point, or at least he's recorded stats, like rushing yards to this point.
Right.
So now that both sides are looking to move on, where do y'all think he's going to end up?
Honestly, I think they got a tough running back core up in Buffalo, and I think even though they got a young gun in Zach Moss, I think that they could still use some work. So, I mean, I would like to see him go to Buffalo. Maybe that'll help because they are a mainly pass-first offense, and although Josh Allen is a great QB and they have great receivers all around, being Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in the league, I think improvement in their running game would definitely elevate that offense into the next level.
No, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. You can't have Josh Allen running it every play. You know what I mean?
It works sometimes.
It works sometimes, especially when they're at the goal line with his big stature. But what I was thinking is Miami. Tua's out for who knows how long. And their running backs, Gaskin, he's okay. He showed some flashes last year, but he hasn't done much this season, especially in the fantasy world. Ahmed is just really seems like a guy off the street, and Malcolm Brown really hasn't been able to get it done with any team he's been with, especially with the Rams in the past few seasons. So to me,
Right.
if he could go over and lead the Dolphins' backfield and really give them a hammer in that, I think that would be a great spot, and maybe even have fantasy relevance.
Yeah,
above those guys.
Let's not forget, too, the Dolphins' offense is also still trying to find its identity.
Right.
I mean, obviously last year they had Ryan Fitzpatrick at the helm majority of the year. Now they're going full in with Tua, but sadly Tua did suffer that rib injury last week. So right now they're just still trying to, basically regroup and figure out what to do now until their franchise quarterback comes back. Now, for me, one team I could see him going to, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's possible, is the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Chris Carson's a great running back. I don't think there's any, there's absolutely no argument there. He's a great running back, especially for that type of system. However, Rashad Penny just got injured last week. He might be out for who knows how much time. I think he's maybe out for at least this week. I don't know future. And
he's injured all the time.
Right. And also, they're going to be declining his fifth-year option. Or they actually already declined his fifth-year option. He's going to be a free agent after this year.
Right.
So this could be a great place for during the time being until they are able to get Penny back. I mean, obviously they still have Travis Homer and a couple other running backs there. I mean, Russell Wilson's still a scrambling QB. He'll be able to pick up rushing yards if he needs to.
He's aging though.
He's what?
He's aging.
Yeah.
He's not as fast as he used to be. He's not as strong as he used to be, and he could easily get hurt.
Right. I mean, it's definitely, especially because they've been focused a lot more on the pass this year.
Right.
I mean, obviously we're seeing Lockett had 2 explosive games right out of the gate. DK Metcalf had a arguably his best game up to this season.
Right.
Seems like those two are fluctuating, but back to Marlon Mack, he needs a fresh start in a new city. And I personally think the Seahawks could be that team. However, I agree with you guys. I could see him going to the Bills or Dolphins or any other team, quite frankly. Teams like the Jets, maybe the Steelers, depending on how their running back core goes. I don't know. We'll just have to really see what happens in the next couple days. We may not see a trade happen before this week concludes, but we could see it maybe before Sunday games.
And another guy looking for a fresh start is the Kansas City Chiefs' new practice squad signee, Josh Gordon. Peyton, what you got with that one?
I really have high hopes for Josh Gordon. I know he really hasn't played in the last year, but I did actually pick him up on the waivers this week. I saw him kind of sitting there and heard about the news, so I thought I'd give him a chance. He's definitely a stash for now. I don't really see immediate upside because he will have to stay in the practice squad for a couple weeks. But, I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Okay, Tyreek hasn't been Tyreek really past couple of weeks with the deep ball and all like stuff like that, and the Chiefs really haven't been winning very much. So just getting another name in there that's not Mecole Hardman or Pringle or Robinson that attracts attention and just gets eyes on him, gets guys to cover him where you can't double Tyreek all the time.
That's
would
true.
help Tyreek out and could even help him out too.
I mean, like what we saw from Gordon in years past was, great, like in football, but also in fantasy value. So maybe he turns into something, but you can't have the highest hopes for a guy that's on a practice squad.
Right. And he's definitely, like I said, he's been in and out of the league the last 5 or 6 years. Obviously he had that huge year in 2013 on the Cleveland Browns when they had basically the revolving door of quarterbacks. He was still able to put up a monstrous season. And I don't know, it's going to be interesting because we've seen the flashes he's had, and he's definitely still like up at a stellar level. But whether or not obviously he's not going to overshadow guys like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Like we already know that immediately. Like he's going to be more or less like the veteran player that's there to come in like on like second or third down. They need another receiver in when they can take Hardman or Pringle out.
Right. Well, does that make him a flex option? Like we saw Sammy Watkins last year, kind of playing that same like similar role, and he was like a week-to-week flex option. So we could see that.
You want to hear my honest opinion? Anybody that plays receiver, tight end, or running back on the Chiefs could be considered a flex option any given week.
And that shows that he could be the guy.
Right. He'll probably have some sort of impact once he gets promoted to the active roster. I don't think he's going to play this week. They might have him on the practice squad for 1 week, or they may rush him up to get ready to play this week. But if not, we'll probably see him back on the field by week 5, and who knows? He might actually be a legit flex play and potentially not just regular league, not just deep leagues, but also like regular leagues.
Right.
It's a risk willing to take at the moment.
Yeah. And speaking of flexes, I see Chuba as possibly being a flex, if not RB2 on the right team. Christian McCaffrey last week, we all know he suffered an injury, a hamstring injury. He's not on IR, so that's good. That means he's not going to be missing 3 weeks.
Potentially.
That's what you think when you don't see a guy go on IR. Does this open doors for Chuba? I don't know. This matchup going against the Cowboys could be tough. We saw last week the Cowboys held Philadelphia to only 3 rushing attempts from their running backs.
Wow.
So it's going to be tough.
Right.
But
at the moment the Cowboys are allowing a little over 10 points a game to running backs, which really what you're looking for is Chuba to produce like Mike Davis did right off the bat last year, which he doesn't have the same veteran leadership that Mike Davis had, and he had knew the playbook and knew all that kind of stuff. He'd been sitting there for a few years. Chuba's brand new out the gates, but he's a smart guy. He's a fast guy, and I'm hoping for Chuba owners that he can play the way he did 2 years ago when he was basically the best running back in the country.
He definitely put stats on the board last week. Obviously they were bouncing between him and Royce Freeman. And Darnold did take to the air a lot more. DJ Moore had a fantastic week. Tommy Tremble scored a touchdown. Yep. So right now it's more or less just he's legit. I would say at most he's a flex play this week, but he has the potential for RB2 numbers if he can develop at least in the pass game, which he can from what we've seen in college.
Right.
And he's not going to be Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey is in basically his own fantasy realm at this point with Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. They're the big three that when they're healthy, they're putting up arguably 20 plus points a game. So I could see Chuba getting maybe 12, 13 points this week, depending on if you're in a PPR league or half PPR or just not PPR. But I think he'll be a legit play for someone who needs him.
Right.
If they obviously if someone has Christian McCaffrey in fantasy, I would hope that you went out of your way to try to get Chuba as best you can, because obviously we saw last year with Mike Davis, and he wasn't putting up Christian McCaffrey numbers, but it was still good numbers nonetheless.
Right.
And we could see the same happen again here, even though it is a little bit of a different system now that Sam Darnold's quarterback and not Teddy Bridgewater.
And so with this podcast, we all play fantasy football. We're in the same leagues or stuff like that. We just talked about a lot of NFL football action. We're also going to talk about fantasy football action just in general and our own league. So now we're going to get into our gossip section, which we call Girl Talk.
All right, welcome to the second segment. We call this Girl Talk because, well, in this league, so for context, the reason why we titled this podcast the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast, our Dynasty League, which the three of us and 8 other people are a part of, is the All Love Dynasty League. That's what we call it. However, just from what we've seen over the past year and a half, there doesn't seem to be a lot of love passed around. It seems to be more or less hate. People trash-talking teams, people just like ripping on each other for like trades or moves they make. So we figured it'd be a great way to like show a double-edged sword. And all love and all hate. I don't think double-edged sword is the right word, but you know what? Let's roll with it. All right, so the first thing we'll actually talk about is the running back core of your team, Jacob. Now, in my opinion, this man has arguably the best running back core out of all the 11 teams in fantasy. He has, on his starting roster alone, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts, Antonio Gibson of the Washington Football Team, Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals, and Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles. But he also has Javonte Williams of the Broncos and Trey Sermon of the 49ers in the wings in case they have any of those guys happen to go down with injury.
And I mean, Trey Sermon could potentially have a breakout right here. I mean, he's a rookie. He looks good, and the room is there for him right now in San Francisco. What he does with it, we'll see. Is he a starter right now? If you have to flex him, I would, but I haven't seen enough from him to say that he's a RB2 or a flex quite yet. I mean, yeah, like you were saying, his running backs are great, and I think anybody would agree they would love to have a running back core like that. But these guys really haven't been performing. I mean, Jonathan Taylor hasn't shown me anything crazy yet. We saw last week Miles Sanders get shut down to 2 rushes for the entire game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if these guys keep doing this, he's going to keep losing, quite honestly.
I mean, quite frankly, the only running back on his team so far that's really shown out like most of the games, if not all the games he's been in, is Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
And that's because the Bengals' offense is really starting to revamp. Now, back on your point with Trey Sermon, it should be noted that the 49ers are still in this like running back by committee system where you got Trey Sermon, I mean, when he's active. You have Elijah Mitchell when he's active. And you also have JaMychal Hasty, although I'm pretty sure he's now injured for a extended period of time. Right now, the 49ers running back core is pretty injured. Like, I think most, if not all, the running backs, except aside from Kyle Juszczyk. Juszczyk. Other than Kyle Juszczyk, is dealing with some form of injury or is coming back from injury. So it's not a bad option right now for Sermon, but like when you're in that, when you have such a running back core like there, I don't think you're gonna need like to trust Sermon that much unless like 2 of your guys go down with injury. And on your point, I mean, Colts offense is still struggling. It's still trying to like find its form with Carson Wentz now in at QB. Antonio Gibson did have a good week last week, although granted most of those points did come off a 73-yard touchdown catch, which was fairly interesting to see. That was probably one of the bigger plays of the weekend if you don't count Jamal Agnew and Justin Tucker. And Miles Sanders, though, that was definitely the disappointment of the week. But he should rebound this week.
Yeah. I agree with that, and I think we should move into our next topic being the leftovers.
Ooh, yeah. That's one of the teams in our league, and to say this person has suffered heartbreaking losses would be an understatement. Last year, he lost, I think, 4 games within 3 points, and 1 game he lost on a Kenyon Drake, like, 70-yard run with, like, a minute left in the game when they had no reason really to run the ball. I remember him watching the game, and then he sees Kenyon Drake run for the touchdown. He immediately just goes in his room and just, like, doesn't come out for the rest of the night.
Yes.
And this week, he lost by what? Just one point?
1 point.
1 point.
To the best team in the league at the moment. Sleepyheads are leading the league, and he got within 1 point.
Yeah, the Sleepyheads have a high-scoring Cooper Kupp leading their team right now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, He is absolutely on fire. He has definitely stepped up in this offense as a guy that was, before the season, looked at as the number 2 option.
Behind Robert Woods.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's really stepped up, and, I mean, you really got to take that offense serious, and they're doing well, and it's definitely helping out his team. All right, so this next segment we're going into is called the Bourbon Bowl. It's a reference from probably one of my favorite movies. It's a football movie. We all know it. We all love it. That's The Waterboy.
Yep.
Great movie. Adam Sandler playing the Waterboy comes in at halftime and, wins the Bourbon Bowl for the Mud Dogs. So this is not going to be as glamorous of a game that I'm about to bring up, but I'd like to call this week's matchup that I'm going with the Toilet Bowl. And that is a matchup between two of the worst teams in our league. So that's going to be the Leftovers, managed by Reed, and the NOLA Naked Nutria, managed by Amani.
Can I ask a question real quick? What is a nutria?
They're home from New Orleans.
Yeah.
They're large rodents. They got those yellow, orange teeth.
Now I remember.
Yeah, so the Nutria versus the Leftovers. It's an interesting game. Peyton's going to give us a little insight on what he thinks is going to go on.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you. Just honest
all
question.
good. All good.
All good or all love?
I see what you did there. All love.
And all hate.
And all hate.
All right.
So this matchup, even though it's two of some of our worst teams in our league, we
got a competitive league.
Yeah, it's a very competitive league.
I mean, it's still week 4. Like, teams that are at the bottom could still very well make the playoffs if other teams start
they're
suffering.
They're still swirling around the toilet. They haven't gone down the drain yet, so we're gonna see.
Yeah,
what can happen.
It's gonna be a tough matchup. It's gonna come down to a few points. I believe the projected is 101 for Reed versus Amani's 97.
Something like that.
Yeah. Now,
so
remember,
both
she
teams
does have like some starters that are still injury prone, but she still has to replace them in her lineup.
Both teams are dealing with some injuries. Reed maybe not having Josh Jacobs this week. We don't know. He may not be active.
Yeah.
The
new young gun, Payton Barber, is in there for him.
Yeah, and Amani has Deontay Johnson as a questionable. I mean, he's day by day, and T. Higgins is out. So that definitely hurts. And I mean, she's also got Kyle Pitts, who really hasn't proven himself, but I don't know if I necessarily blame that on his performance or just the Atlanta offense not finding a groove.
Right. I mean, I got Calvin Ridley on our Dynasty League too, and he's had solid games, but it's been nothing crazy like it was last year, and it's just a product of the offense not being.
It's not really what you expect to see from Matt Ryan.
Right.
Led offense, because I mean he's proven to be a good quarterback for
fantasy-wise, definitely.
Yeah. I remember when I was first starting to play fantasy years ago, he was always my go-to quarterback because I could get him so late, and he was always so solid. So I mean, that offense definitely still has something to prove to me, but we'll see what happens in this matchup. I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. I think this will definitely. I mean, obviously both teams are in desperate needs of wins. So whoever wins this could have momentum on their side. The other one, probably not. It's gonna. But hey, they'll be down there with me because I'm still 0-3.
There you go.
Yeah,
and so it won't. They won't be alone. So it's fine.
And one player on the roster of the Naked Nutria is DeAndre Hopkins. How do you like his matchup this week?
Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting one because the Cardinals are playing the Rams, who I would argue is the best team in the league right now. Obviously, the offense is completely revamped now with Matthew Stafford coming in, but that I think something that's not talking about is that defense. Because, I mean, they got Aaron. I just moved the table. They got Aaron Donald, who is arguably the best defensive player of our time, up there with J.J. Watt. I think it's probably, I would say maybe it's almost co-linear with who's the better player.
Right.
But they also have Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
That's a player that I think people keep forgetting is on that team because Aaron Donald's on the defense, and he's obviously the leader and the captain of that defensive squad.
Right.
But Jalen Ramsey's still playing some of his best football. I mean, obviously it took a little bit of time after he left Jacksonville, but now he's a first-team All-Pro with the Los Angeles Rams, and Yeah, this matchup's going to be interesting because DeAndre Hopkins, I'd argue, is maybe top 3 receiver of this decade with Antonio Brown and, pre-drama Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. And DeAndre Hopkins has shown he can literally make first-team All-Pro, Pro Bowl caliber corners look like rookies.
Right.
But I think Ramsey will hold them down. However, you can't roll out the entire Cardinals offense because they do have a pretty nice receiving core. I mean, AJ Green, he's a vet leader there. He's getting a few catches. But 2 guys that have completely shocked me that I didn't think would be doing good so far are Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore. I mean, Christian Kirk's had 2 big games the last 3 weeks. I mean, obviously with this offense, it's going to fluctuate between who has the better game. But Kirk's been a major surprise, especially because most people were saying, some pundits were saying, do not draft him in your draft this year.
Right.
And Rondale Moore, I mean, he had a pretty bad game. He only had, I think, 2 catches for 1 yard and a 4-yard rush. He also had that infamous highlight where he muffed a punt because the flag hit the ball midair, which y'all haven't seen that. Y'all need to see it because it's one of the weirdest highlights I've seen.
Sounds interesting.
But I mean, that offense is so good. So even if they shut down, if Jalen Ramsey can shut down DeAndre Hopkins, you can't rule out the Cardinals' offense. Granted, I think the Rams will win this game, but obviously the matchup will be D-Hop versus Ramsey. But I think Ramsey will be able to hold his own.
Yeah, I think Christian Kirk could be interesting. He's had a couple good weeks this season already, and he's actually rated number 2 by PFF on the season. They have an interesting analytic, really run way of figuring out how players are playing, and they rate them on those different things. Not going to get into that right now, but Christian Kirk is up there. He's number 2 behind Devontae Adams, in between him and Cooper Kupp. So he's been very efficient, been playing well as the number 2A to Rondale Moore and to AJ Green and other guys there. So it'll definitely be interesting to see if anybody else comes out, because DeAndre Hopkins is going to be shadowed by Ramsey.
Right.
He's got a big shadow.
And I also add this: if the Cardinals' offense keeps going the way it is and they keep winning games, I honestly can see Kyler Murray being a dark horse for the MVP.
No, he might be my front runner right now.
Yeah,
if I had to choose.
He's up there with, I want to say, Mahomes, and at this point you can make it.
Mahomes is 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, Mahomes is also putting up pretty good stats. I mean, unless you want to, you can also throw Derek Carr in there. Derek Carr has been the surprise
Right now, yeah.
So
he's leading the league in passing yards right now,
and it's by 200 yards. He's leading by, I think it's 1,200 to 1,000.
And he's leading a team that's leading a division with,
juggernauts.
Another undefeated team. The Chargers, and the Broncos, the Chargers, the Chiefs. That's one of the hardest divisions in the NFL, and he's proven that he can throw the ball and lead a team and win games.
Yeah.
And then speaking about great teams, I'm going to go into my Bourbon Bowl pick, which goes back into the normal NFL. And if you guys haven't heard yet, Brady is going back to New England this weekend. Sunday Night Football on NBC. Everybody can watch it. I mean, it's going to be hopefully a great game. I'm excited for it. I'm excited just to see the fans' reaction. I'm excited to see everything. And it's on prime time. And I really just can't wait. I want to see how Mac Jones does and how Belichick prepares him for that. And to see if Brady can continue his great fantasy success for this season. Maybe win a game.
I mean, I think if there was any time for Mac Jones to step up and show that he is the new franchise quarterback in New England and show everybody in New England that he is there and he's there to win games and hopefully win Super Bowls, this is the game to step up. I mean, it's going against Brady. It's in New England. He's Mac Jones is going to have New England right there beside him, and Bill Belichick is obviously going to be right there beside him, and I think they're going to get their best game plan, and this is going to be something for Mac Jones to really show out. And, I mean, I like that you brought up this matchup because you really can't talk about fantasy without talking about the Bucs offense.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy what they're doing. Rob Gronkowski coming out of retirement last year, and I mean, what's he ranked right now among tight ends?
I want to say he's second behind Kelsey.
He's 2 total points behind Kelsey, which he's a little bit behind, but he's leading the third guy, Hawkinson, pretty solidly right now. So, that wraps up our Bourbon Bowl picks.
Who do you have winning? This game?
Winning. Yeah, let's pick that. I'm gonna say Bucks. They just got more talent around the ball. I mean, they won the Super Bowl last year. They're gonna bounce back. Bucks by 10 or so. I wouldn't give it a huge game just because Patriots, a lot of them played with Brady, not Mac Jones, but most of them, and they're gonna come in there with a chip on their shoulder. So they're gonna come at them, but I don't think they get it done.
Yeah, I think both teams are gonna have a hot start. I think it's gonna be a high-scoring game. Belichick's definitely gonna come out with probably some choice play calls that you wouldn't normally see out of Belichick. You might see a couple trick plays on both sides of the ball. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun game to watch, and I think I'm going to have to take the Bucks as well. I really think around the same point spread, maybe a touchdown, maybe 10 points. It's going to be a close game. It's definitely going to be a hard-fought battle. It's going to be something I look forward to seeing.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be one of the games of the week, if not the game of the week. Especially because the whole storyline, Brady returning to Gillette Stadium for the first time since he left, went to the Buccaneers and won a Super Bowl in his first season there. Right. I mean, obviously this will be the very first time we see Brady versus Belichick. Obviously, that duo has so many accolades to that name, but we're now going to finally see a battle between arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. Actually, not arguably, the greatest quarterback of all time, and arguably the best head coach of all time. It's going to be an interesting matchup, but I agree with y'all. I do think the Bucs will at least make it out with the victory because I just do think they are the better team, and I just don't see that Patriots defense being able to hold that Bucs offense for long. Whereas I can see the Bucs defense starting to step up in the second half and starting to mitigate and then eventually shut down that Patriots offense.
Well, guys, the Mud Dogs, they won the Bourbon Bowl. So let's get on to our hot takes. And yeah, I'll just get into my hot take real fast because it involves a player from that game. I'm going to be watching him very closely. He's on my fantasy team in this dynasty league. But my hot take is that, I don't know if you guys know this actually, but Jacoby Myers has not scored a touchdown in his, I believe, 3-year career. Last year,
in the league that long?
Last year he had a great year, but did not score, did not get in the end zone. I think this week he's still been leading the team in targets and stuff like that. But I think he'll get in the end zone. He's got to if the Patriots want to make a run for this.
Right.
But that's my hot take. Jacoby Myers scores his first career touchdown.
I like that one.
That's a fair take.
I could see it happening. Like I said, I think we're going to see all the tricks pulled out of the bag on this one. Right. So maybe it's a unconventional play, but I think we can see Jacoby Myers in the end zone. My hot take on this one is Zeke is coming off of a great game. The Cowboys in a whole are coming off of a great game. I mean, they shut down Philadelphia last week. But I think them playing against the Panthers this week, that Zeke is going to get under 50 rushing yards. I'm going to call it over under 50. What would you guys take?
Who are they playing again?
Carolina has the best defense against running backs this year. They're only allowing 5 total fantasy points to running backs over the past 3 games.
When you think of that Panthers defense, you think of the pass rush. Because we saw that against the Saints in week 2.
Yeah, Kamara didn't do anything.
That's true. Kamara had a pretty bad game.
Right.
Tony Jones couldn't get anything done. Even Taysom Hill couldn't even find ways to run.
Right.
So I actually have to agree. I think it's going to be under. I really don't. I could see that Panthers defense stymieing Zeke Elliott. I really do think it's possible.
Yeah, I see where you guys are coming from. I still believe in Zeke, and they're going to give him the ball enough to me that he's going to get over 50 rushing yards. But we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Langley, what's your take?
Yeah, I think it'll be definitely an interesting matchup because Cowboys arguably. I know people like to rip on the Cowboys, but they are coming off 2 straight wins. They could probably keep building momentum. They could be 3. They could have been 3-0 because they almost beat the Bucs on opening night. But speaking of games, folks, this is not a misnomer. The Raiders and Broncos are both 3-0. They are leading the AFC West. People thought the Chiefs would be leading. Some people even thought the Chargers could be. But I don't think anyone was really thinking Broncos and Raiders. Mm-hmm. So going into this week, the Broncos are playing the Baltimore Ravens, while the Raiders will be playing their rival, the Chargers. I think the Broncos are going to lose to the Ravens. I truly think the Ravens will be able to hold their own and do it. But I think the Raiders could beat the Chargers. Now the Chargers are coming off they lost to the Cowboys, barely, but they did beat the Washington football team in week 1, and they just beat the Kansas City Chiefs last week. And that Chargers offense is pretty explosive right now. I think, obviously, Justin Herbert's truly been a higher star than most people would possibly imagine. You've definitely been reaping the benefits of it because that's your QB in fantasy. And, that offense is just, stacked. Austin Eckler is arguably one of the most underrated running backs in the league. Mike Williams is having easily an incredible start to the season, showing shades of 2018 where he, I want to say he scored over 10 touchdowns, if not more.
Yeah.
And they also still got
Keenan Allen,
who's
Jared Cook.
They
got guys.
Keenan Allen's definitely been one of the most consistent receivers the last few years, and Jared Cook,
he's there.
And he's definitely filling in the shoes that Hunter Henry left empty when he went off to New England.
So the Raiders, they basically got to outscore them, which they've been able to do for the past 3 weeks.
Yeah.
In a sense.
It's not like the Raiders' offense is terrible. We were talking about it earlier. Derek Carr is right now the best statistical QB in the league this season.
Right.
And Josh Jacobs has been out, but Kenyon Drake's held his own. But Payton Barber's come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He's definitely held down the fort. Henry Ruggs is starting to break out. He had obviously that basically game-sealing touchdown against the Steelers a couple weeks ago. Nelson Aguilar is still there. He's still putting up numbers. And obviously the biggest player on the biggest playmaker on that entire offense, Darren Waller.
Yeah.
I think the Raiders have a chance. Now, the Chargers D isn't a joke. They got Joey Bosa. They got Casey Hayward. They got
Derwin James.
They got
Asante Samuel.
They got
played
Asante
well
Samuel.
last week.
They got Asante Samuel Jr.
Mm-hmm.
This Chargers defense is really good. And their head coach, Brandon Staley, I believe was a defensive coach under Sean McVay.
Okay.
So it's a defensive-minded head coach. So the Raiders definitely are going to have their hands full with this. But I truly think the Raiders can somehow pull this off.
Yeah,
I really do.
We'll have to watch and see.
And on Monday night, that's going to be the last game of the year.
Fun night.
Last game of the year. Last game of the week.
But yeah, it's a fun night. So guys, that's going to wrap up our first episode of the All Love, All Hate podcast. We're here to talk fantasy football.
All Love, All Hate fantasy football
podcast. We're here to talk fantasy football, our league, NFL, and just overall. We're going to be signing out right now. One really quick thing I wanted to leave you all guys with. Watch Tommy Tremble this week. I think he could be a long shot to break out against a bad Cowboys defense who give up a lot of points to the tight ends position.
Dan Earl's not there anymore. He's now in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer when he got traded in the C.J. Henderson trade.
Just watch Tommy Tremble this week. And we'll sign out. See you guys next week.
I'm Chris Langley.
Jacob Breeder.
Payton Hedrick.
And we'll see you guys.
Thanks for watching.